just witnessed a bunch of fighting clubs demonstrating themselves. Debating is the fighting of the mind in many ways, and you're about to see 6 intellectuals go to war. The topic for this debate is that this house, as an Instagram influencer, would present one's life as authentically as possible.
So being an influencer clearly sucks. You have to post constantly, you have strict standards of appearance and just general vibes. You have to interact with insane people just constantly. And it also just doesn't immediately pay that well unless you can subside off like Fashion Nova leggings. And given this, we think that if you are to be an influencer, you should make the process as painless as possible. So, a few things firstly in setup, and then I'll explain why being authentic is going to be better for you personally and better for your business. Firstly, in setup, what do we think you care about as an aspiring influencer? 2 main things. Firstly, we think you likely care about your professional life, which is to say you probably want to be famous and you probably want to make money. We can't really envision anyone wanting to be an influencer without wanting those 2 things. But we think secondarily, you're likely to care about your personal happiness and mental health. You're probably not willing to trade off like fame and wealth for just being miserable all the time. So those are the 2 kind of criteria by which we'll judge your success as an influencer. The second thing to answer in setup is, what do we think authenticity actually looks like? We think there's 3 elements of being an authentic influencer. Firstly, we think you're likely still to do usual influencer stuff like post pictures of your clothes and your travel and your food, because it's likely that you have a genuine interest in those things. We don't really understand why you want to be an influencer if you didn't. Secondly though, we think you're likely to provide more genuine insights into your life, discussing things like your struggles, showing like the behind the scenes of being an influencer, talking about what you do on a day-to-day basis. You're likely to try and make that relatively realistic, and you're likely to try and be open and engaged with your followers. So that's the kind of general pitch of content that you're going to offer. And then thirdly, what we think you're not going to do is, do things like editing, sort of mislead your followers about the lifestyle that you lead. We think you're probably likely to do things like body positivity, and you're likely also to explicitly market this, to present yourself as being an authentic person, to tell your followers, I'm being really honest with you, I'm being really genuine. Alright, why is this a good thing for you to do? Firstly, why are you more likely to succeed as an influencer? I think the first thing to say here is some important context about the influencing market, which, let's be real, is incredibly saturated. We literally have a thing called Instagram face, where people, are kind of gravitating towards the same head. The same products are constantly being circulated, and if you look at what these people are advertising, they're typically the same set of things. We think what that means functionally is, while a lot of people might follow you because you're like hot or like the clothes you wear, it's unlikely that you particularly stand out to them. It's unlikely that you differentiate yourself, or that they would really remember you even as someone that you follow. You're like incredibly fungible. You don't really mean much to many people if you are just like a standard inauthentic influencer. What are the mechanisms by which we think being authentic helps you succeed? First off, we think it's likely to let you differentiate yourself from everyone else, which is to say that if you have content which is more unique to your actual individual circumstances, if it's something which expresses your personality, it's likely to be more shareable. It's likely to be something people will tag their friends in and engage with, rather than just liking passively, because it's something which stands out when you're scrolling through your feed. Secondly, we think you're also likely to reach new audiences through things like niche brands, because you are different from others, because you represent particular attributes unique to you. That's going to be something which appeals in a way which the stock standard basic influencing probably doesn't. Secondly, we think people are going to like you better, and that's for a few reasons. First of all, we think if you present yourself as an actual human, you're going to be more relatable, because people will realize that you have struggles and flaws and things like that. That means people are going to be much more invested in you, much more likely to be loyal to you, rather than just following you for your appearance or your lifestyle. Secondly, we think that being open and honest in your Instagram will create a sense of community with your followers, where people are typically engaging, they're talking to you, and that's going to be something which yields a long-term following, and people who are actually willing to support you in material ways, rather than just abstractly or just providing you with a like. And thirdly, we think in a world where people are increasingly resistant to the kind of standard model of influencing, where people just unfollow people who make them feel jealous or have low self-esteem, people are less likely to unfollow you because they get bored of your content, or because you make them feel terrible about yourself, because they understand that you're a flawed, interesting and complex human. So we think your followers are much more likely to be invested in you, they're much more likely to like you. Thirdly, we think that you're going to have an easier job producing content, which is super important, because basically that's what an influencer does. They create lots of content all the time. That's for 5 reasons. Firstly, you just have to do less editing and less retouching, which is a lot of work, so you're saving yourself effort. Secondly, you probably have to lead a less costly lifestyle because you don't have to pretend that you're constantly traveling or constantly going to nice cafes and stuff like that. You can be honest with your followers about what you really do on a day-to-day basis. Thirdly, you have more content ideas because you're not just talking about your outfits or your holidays, you can talk about things that mean a lot to you. Fourthly, you're likely to be able to expand into other mediums, whether that be multimedia, because you can actually make a video about something you're interested in, or even things like doing a podcast or a book, because people are really invested in your life. And fifthly, perhaps most importantly, you enjoy that content production because it is things that you genuinely care about, that genuinely represent you. What that means then is you're going to have a much more long-standing success as an influencer, you're less likely to get fatigued, and people are more likely to engage. Finally, let's just deal with the case that, even if your influencing success wanes, what is going to be the long-term success that you'll achieve as a result of this authenticity? 3 things. Firstly, we think that you'll probably have a successful legacy, a brand and an identity, because you're more than just like your appearance, you're more than just, the outfits that you afford. That means secondly, that you're more likely to get things like writing gigs, like brand deals in the long run. And thirdly, we think that the media actually really loves real influencers because they also hate fake influencers. So you're probably going to get more long-standing and more positive coverage. I'm going to briefly talk to you about why that's better for your personal life, but I think we'll expand a bit more on that in a second. Anyway, firstly, just in terms of your self-image, we just think it's awful for you as an individual to constantly be editing yourself. We think that reflects internally that you're not really happy with yourself. That you don't like yourself, and so we think in our world people actually like and support the real you, and that's something which is going to be immensely validating to have followers that share interests and care about you as a person rather than like a fake version of yourself. Overall, we think being an influencer probably is terrible for you in many ways, but if you have to do it, we think it's far better to represent yourself authentically and not to deeply mislead your followers. Proud to affirm.
Fun sells, editing sells, cool clothes sell, cool trips sell, and no one cares about you or who you really are. 3 things I'm going to tell you in this speech. Firstly, why everyone is fake. Secondly, why you're going to lose lots of followers because you're probably going to be really boring at the point in which you try to become authentic. And thirdly, why you're going to definitely make less money and lead a much less cool lifestyle. So firstly, on this question of why everyone is fake. We thought that firstly, people generally in life just weren't very authentic, right? Because you probably present the best version of yourself to people generally. And specifically, this is true as an Instagram influencer because you probably have a brand and you need to buy into that. You have an idealized self of who you really are, and that's definitely not going to be authentic because this packaged version of yourself was going to be the thing that sold the most. But secondly, we thought that as an influencer, you obviously wanted to influence other people. You obviously had a want to be seen by and admired by lots. That's why you're going to sell yourself in the biggest way possible. You're going to put yourself out in the biggest way possible, and you're definitely going to play it up all that you can. That means you are necessarily going to heighten elements of your personality. You are going to fake elements of your personality, and we thought that was totally fine insofar as it gave you, the satisfaction that you totally deserved, and also obviously as an Instagram influencer, that's the choice that you would choose to make. Thirdly here, Ellie talks about how obviously at the point in which you are more authentic, you have more personal happiness. This was never going to be true, right? Because firstly, influencers don't want to share their real self for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because it's obviously incredibly and intensely vulnerable. It's very difficult to open up yourself and be hoarded on by a whole bunch of haters on the internet. Secondly, people might hate you for who you really are, which is probably why you need to package yourself in the first place. And thirdly, no one really cares about who you generally are anyway. Fourthly, we thought that it was probably right for Instagram influencers who probably go into this industry to want to collate their best memories together, to be able to look over it on photos or on their Instagram account and see how glorious it was in the first place, which is why necessarily they weren't going to live their best authentic lives. That means at the end of this point that you're going to pick influencers generally that were probably fake, and they probably wanted wanted to live up to expectations that allowed themselves to be the most marketed or that allowed themselves to feel their best self, which is why they would not want to be authentic. Secondly, on this question of why there is less followers, well, you're going to get less followers if you try to become authentic because you become boring. As an influencer, you obviously want the most followers as possible. This was a metric that AF gave you and a metric that we're going to use. Mechanistically, we obviously think you're going to get less followers if you don't present the best and most glorified version of yourself, because people obviously want to follow someone who's, you know, special, right? Because people want to see people who travel the world and go on cool trips and live in cool hotels. They want to see like you hanging out with, like, you know, riding a horse on a beach, and they want to see all the new things that you get to do, because that's probably like really therapeutic for them. That's a way they can like manifest their own aspirations. That's a way they can escape. But fourthly, and very importantly, that was a way in which they could find inspiration in their very own and probably really dull lives. That means no one's going to follow someone who is the exact same as them, because they can just take a look at themselves, right? That means that you're going to lose followers at the point in which people unfollow you, and then like you're obviously not going to have your brand anyway. I think the context of this also occurs because the Instagram sphere is so crowded, right? You need to compete against people who are editing their photos, who are retouching, and who are going on cool trips, right? That means those accounts are the ones that historically do well. That means you're also going to engage in that type of conduct, and you're not going to, you know, try and carve out this niche like place of authenticity, because you want that competitive advantage. Thirdly, we just thought that your authenticity might make you really unlikable, because you could just be a really like unlikable person. Obviously, you don't want to show that on the internet. Thirdly, then, on why you make less money. We thought this was obviously really important because influencers obviously care about money, and that was probably going to be their primary goal. We think there was a certain formula that worked within the Instagram sphere, which is one that in which you flaunt your lifestyle. We think that like trying to aspire to authenticity obviously means you can't do all those things like flaunt lifestyles. It means you can't wear clothes that you probably actually hate, or wear makeup brands that are actually like really cruel to like animals and like test on animals. It also means you probably can't travel to like the countries in which people are starving while you're living in like 5-star hotels, right? That means at the point in which you don't do those cool things, you're going to lose followers. But importantly for you, as a selfish person who cares about their own like, you know, happiness and well-being, you're not going to be able to go on those cool trips or get like cool clothes anymore. But thirdly, also brands probably just don't want you at the point in which you lose followers, because you're no longer useful to them anyway. The impact of this is that you lose lots of sponsorship and money. Obviously, that's the main way in which you are able to get your income as an Instagram influencer, and you obviously don't want that. Therefore, it was so important for influencers to be able to maintain this sense of inauthenticity, to sell themselves in the best way possible. So proud to negate.
Okay, look, the point of this debate, I think, is essentially what is the unique selling point of your average influencer in the status quo, and what exactly is best for their personal life. Because I think the other side has come up and they've given us a vision of how Instagram works that probably just isn't true. Because I think people right now are probably just sick and tired of the bullshit that Instagram influencers are putting out on their Instagrams. That's why you've got pages that are specifically dedicated to calling out influencers who, you know, through some filter, you can see the wardrobe behind them is also curved, or whatever they do to make themselves look inauthentic. The point is, maybe 10 years ago, whenever they invented the iPhone, whenever Mark Zuckerberg, you know, left university and embarked on his career, maybe it was profitable and maybe it was fashionable for Instagram influencers to be portraying themselves with extra glamour and glitz. But that just isn't true anymore. I'm going to talk about two questions I think that's happened in this debate so far. Firstly, what's the best business decision for your average Instagram influencer? And secondly, what makes them happy? Because, you know, that's really, really important. Before that, quick plug, head down to our stores, we're giving out free t-shirts. Please go. Yeah, free t-shirts. Yeah. So, let's talk about the business side of things, right? Yijun stood up here and she told you, look, there is no incentive to be really authentic because people just really don't want to be like the worst versions of themselves. That they're always going to want to present themselves as good as possible for the crowd. I think that's true to the extent that you accept that authenticity rules out presenting yourself as the best you can. Because we're not asking you to take photos of yourself being really dusty after a piss up on a Friday night and post to Instagram. We're not saying that you have to take pictures of yourself at the absolute worst. You can still take pictures of yourself with a lot of makeup. You can still take pictures of yourself with, your newest formal dress or at an actual location. We're just asking that you don't fake it. We're just asking that instead of it being bullshit, it's stuff that you actually do. Because it's really important that we see the difference here. You can be glamorous, you can go to cool places, you can wear nice clothes, and you can look really pretty, and be really authentic at the same time. I think it's crucial for the other team to understand that you don't have to fake everything to be interesting or to be not boring to people. What else did they say? They said that followers don't really buy into the idea of someone being authentic, and nobody's really going to look at someone who is authentic. The issue here is, one, we've already told you why being authentic doesn't mean you have to throw away all of the best pictures of yourself and you have to post shit pictures of yourself. You can still do that, so people are still going to be attracted to you if you are an interesting person, which I think most influencers, by virtue of the lifestyle they've chosen, are probably pretty interesting people. But also, secondly, I don't think it's true that people just don't like authentic people. I think the reason why people are actually naturally attracted to looking at someone who is authentic, even if it is a mirror reflection of themselves, is because it's just something that's really, really hard for someone on the street to do, right? I'm still going to look at someone who's putting up a vlog about their everyday, boring life, not because it's something that I can't do in my life, but because the guy actually has the guts to put it up on YouTube or put it up on Instagram. And that in itself is a really, really interesting thing. At some point, we become desensitized to, the planes to Bali, the private jets, the glamorous makeup, and we just want a little bit of honesty and a true reflection of who we are. So we don't think that's true either. So what does that mean? That means that influencers, in order to be likable, don't actually have to be inauthentic. They can be authentic and still, firstly, capture themselves as an interesting person, but also, secondly, people do like authenticity. People find it good that you're presenting yourself as who you are. Let's talk about why we're going to make influencers very happy on our side of the house. It's pretty important to keep them happy. Okay, so, firstly, I think you just get less paranoia and stress as an influencer if you know you're staying true to yourself. Why is this important? We think this is important because, look, essentially, even if it's been their job for years and years and years, nobody feels good about presenting a version of themselves being known by millions of people, but none of them ever know their true selves. That's why you hear Hollywood celebrities talk about them only being able to date fellow celebrities, or Hollywood celebrities talking about why it's so important for them to have true friends. Because it is really, really difficult in your personal life to have everyone view you as someone who you're not. But naturally, if you're an influencer and you present yourself as this inauthentic version of yourself, that's going to be a natural consequence. People are going to think that you're someone who you're not. People are going to treat you differently, even though you might completely hate the idea of being that person, but you're just in it for the money. That's something that you can't just do away with. That's something that's a pretty fucking big deal, and we think it's really important for influencers' happiness that this happens. But also, I think as a final point, if you're someone who's being authentic and you're someone who's showing, this is my true body, this is who I am, I'm promoting body positivity, it's probably just something that's really, really nice feeling for you to do. You're being altruistic. You're helping millions of young girls and young boys around the world to know that they don't have to be looking super fit to be someone who is valued and to be a good person. That's going to make you feel good. You're doing something good for society. Sweetie's walking up to me, so I got to get her hair off the stage now. Bye.
We live in a society where even average people edit their photos and selectively pick the images they're going to post and use filters and everything to make their lives look better. So the question I have for this team is what influencers will look like if they're the only ones, being authentic? And the answer is they'll look like the losers of Instagram. And there will be influencers for not much longer, right? No one's going to buy a $60 water bottle from someone whose live streams are just them brushing their teeth and vaping in their bedroom. No one's going to watch that, and no one's going to respect you for doing that. And so you're not going to be able to sell any product. David reckons he'd watch someone live out a normal life even though he could live that life too. And I really, really doubt that. I really doubt that, because I know David, and I know what his college lifestyle is like. And I'd be willing to guess that his real life would be more interesting than seeing someone brush their teeth or seeing an authentic influencer. And it's because these guys don't realize just how boring and just how lame these influencers will be that they're going to lose the debate. Alright, the first thing I'm going to talk about is why, as an influencer, personally, you'd feel like a loser if you listen to their side. The first reason why is that your posts will be worse than the average person's, because no one is authentic on Instagram, or at least no one with at least a reasonable following who's at least popular within their own social circles. That is why, by comparison, you will look like the loser. And because you feel like a loser, you're likely to feel bad about yourself. But in addition, Ellie talked all about how influencers tend to get bullied on Instagram all the time. And if you think that bullying is bad now, when you're flying first class around the world and living a glamorous life, just imagine how bad that bullying will be when you're like, I don't know, feeling awkward in like a shopping center and like, trying on different outfits and not sure which ones look good. The bullying is going to get so much worse and you'll definitely feel like a loser. The second reason why you feel like a loser is that you'll be sad posting all the time. Ellie, again, talks about all the cyberbullying. And if you are going to be authentic, if you're going to represent what you're really like, you're going to talk about the experiences which you encounter. And those experiences as an influencer, at least online, are overwhelmingly bad. Those are people either being too close with you and being creepy, or people hating you so much that they throw all manner of insults and awful things your way. We don't think either of those things are going to make you feel any better, which is why as an influencer, you should construct your life to look good as possible so at least you feel that good. And finally, on this matter, we get from David that you don't want to feel like you're fake all the time. And that's why celebrities, a notoriously, sad group of people, have a hard time of it. Maybe it's the case that you don't want to feel fake, but we would say while people might not like being fake, they absolutely love being rich and famous, or at least being perceived as being rich and famous. And it's for that reason we think you just feel so much better if you're fake as an influencer rather than being authentic as one. The second thing I'm going to say, and I think this is the issue where we just run away from these guys so easily, is that you'll make absolutely no money as an authentic influencer, right? The reason is that no one will buy your sponsored products because the products you're selling aren't good, on their own. There's $60 water bottles and really expensive makeup palettes or some strange piece of clothing which you've managed to popularize, and no one wants to buy them for what they are. People buy them because that $60 water bottle or whatever becomes a status symbol. But it only becomes a status symbol if you, the seller, the influencer, has status to make it look cool, right? It's only if someone who's traveling around the world and living that young entrepreneur influencer lifestyle owns these products that those products take on the meaning of being from someone who's making a lot of money and who's really cool and really popular. We think it's laughable to think you'd be able to make as much money on a crappy water bottle under their side of the house than under our side of the house, where at least you get to look like someone who's, living a lavish lifestyle, even if that lifestyle isn't so lavish. So let's review. We live in a society, and that society is one where you need to, fake success before you can be successful. And it's for those reasons that you should vote with side negative. Thank you.
There is a truth about the world that second neg speech ignores, and that is regular people are less hot than influencers. And what that means is that even though regular people edit their photos and do all the visco shit as well, their outcome is less good than influencers because influencers start with a useless marketing degree and a huge ass already. And the difference there is that when influencers make the decision to become authentic, they are not going down to the boringness or the ugliness of everyday life. They're being a hot person who is sad sometimes, and that is what gets you views. So, I'll ask two questions in this speech. Firstly, when you are authentic, how much money will you make? And when you are authentic, how much fun will you have? Firstly, on how much money you're gonna make, little tip, it's a lot more on our side. So, the first claim we get from the negative team is that perhaps your authentic self just sucks. I'll give you 3 reasons why that's unlikely to be the case. Firstly, you are an influencer who's already, as I noted before, you have skills that allow you to do things like self-promote, make interesting content, you have connections, you know other famous people who you can hang out with. Your authentic self, even if you're sad or share your struggles, is still more interesting than most people's. Secondly, note you don't have to include everything in your life. You want to be authentic, but you can still have some selectivity where you don't tell people every little thing you do, because that's just not how putting out content works. Thirdly, you sucking is kind of part of the appeal, right? That's why people want to watch people who they consider to be relatable to them, who share their struggles and their flaws. And that's why the kind of sad posting Dan talks about, people really like, especially when you're sad posting from someone who already has some degree of celebrity fame, who's already hot, who already has cool friends. It's fun and aspirational, but it's also relatable, and that's the sweet spot you only get on the Affirmative. But let's look at the more plausible claim this could be, which is that people like inauthenticity. They like cool trips and clothes because they love aspirational content. The reason why people love that sort of inauthenticity is because they want to escape their shit lives and, you know, see like expensive, lavish lifestyles. But it is better to see other people's lives who are flawed, because then, you know, you like still respond to that problem in yourself, right? Like you still see that there are other people who have the same sort of lifestyle as you, but you just do it in a way that is more fulfilling. But note secondly, as Ellie tells you, you're still going to do that stuff and have those cool friends because you are an influencer in the first place. You don't get rid of those things. Finally, they say brands don't want you. And the affirmative team's reason for this, or rather the negative team's reason for this, is that you lose followers. But we give you like a gazillion reasons why you in fact gain them. You make more interesting content, you're able to compete with all the other influencers who are saturating the market with their inauthenticity, as the negative team concedes in their first speaker's speech. You're also less likely to be cancelled, right? Because you're not editing your photos, also because you have no facade of perfection from which you then fall, right? It's much easier to make content for all the reason Ellie gives you. You don't have to put the effort into editing your photos, you just have more stuff to talk about. And that's why it's not that just you're removing the exciting, lavish lifestyle, you're also adding interesting, relatable content. And that is the premise that the second negative speaker's speech ignores. So that's why you're going to make tons more money. And note that, like, even after you finish your influencer lifestyle, you can get a book deal, you can like go into being a finger puppet, whatever. Like, you have a lot of career options available to you because you've established yourself as a cool, interesting person. So, secondly then, how fun is this going to be? And this is where we really pull ahead in the debate, because obviously you're an influencer with a job, you're also a person, and you probably care about your personal life a lot. Note that your personal life, how happy you are, affects your work. Like, you know, when all those like girls on Instagram are like, I had to take 2 weeks off because like all the pressure of, you know, having to be hot all the time, right? Like, that affects your work, that affects the content you put out. You want to be in a good state of mind. So you should care a lot about this. They say that influencers enjoy getting fake and getting attention. The problem here is they never explain why that is only true of the kind of attention that the negative team provides. Because you get more attention on net on the affirmative team. Because you can talk about how you're a victim. That's something people respond to a lot. You can be relatable in a way that people will engage with. And note that you get much more long-term happiness because you get self-acceptance in real life when you normalize those behaviors to yourself, and also on Instagram. It's not just one or the other. The second thing they say is, well, it's unpleasant to share your true self because you get hate for it. Firstly, you obviously get way more hate for being inauthentic, right? People respond really cruelly to people who they feel aren't being sufficiently authentic. They have to put on the facade that they are. And note that that hate probably hurts a lot more when people say you have nothing besides the editing you do on your photos and so on, because that hate is kind of legitimate. If people are unfairly being mean to you because you're sharing your struggles, you can be like, I don't care, that's a stupid complaint to make. But the hate you get on the negative team side is sort of fair, so that really, really stings. And note thirdly, on our side, you have a defense against hate, which you do not on theirs, which is to say that you're authentic and you have a right to be sharing those stories. Note we give you tons of reasons why this makes your personal life better. It costs less, you have a better self-image, you don't have to perform all the time or fear being found out. You can help other people by sharing your stories, and in turn, they affirm you. When you're an influencer, your life's probably not that fun, you know, in a lot of ways. Probably is fun in other ways, but you definitely make it more fun, and you definitely make more money if you present yourself as authentic.
I didn't listen to any of this debate, so my speech is pretty much just a vibe check. The one thing which I did hear is Sophie tell you that the reason why authentic influencers would still get traction is because they are hotter than your average person. So even if they are hot and sad and vaping in their apartment, you still want to see them doing it because they're attractive. The problem here is that she's clearly never seen any rugby player be sad ever, which is all of them, because none of them are influencers necessarily, but they are still insanely hot. That does not mean I want to see them vaping and crying in their bedroom, even if I have on multiple occasions. 3 things in this debate. First thing about audience, second on personal joy, lastly on business. In terms of audience, do people care about authenticity? We tell you there are two kinds of influencers in this debate. The first kind is those who are already authentic and capitalize off of people's interest in humor, people like The Inspired, Unemployed, and Sweeney. The second kind of influencer is people like Kylie Jenner and Sarah's Day and other Australian beach chicks who just take pictures of their ass. Those kinds of people capitalize on insecurity. I don't use social media for humor because people like The Inspired Unemployed get boring very fast. I also don't use it so I can sympathize with victims who are normally just white girls from very wealthy families who take pictures in their parents' pool. So the victim complex that Sophie tells you about doesn't win you audience. The second thing we need to talk about here then is who is the actual audience on Instagram. This is that the kinds of people who use Instagram to engage with the kinds of influencers who matter in this debate, i.e. the ones who are capitalizing on insecurity and would have to change to be authentic, they do not care about whether you are sad, they do not care if you are a victim, they are only using Instagram to feed into their own insecurity and to ensure that they're not hotter than you so that they can live sad lives and spend hours looking at your trip to Fiji. We don't like watching sad people, we actively shit on them. When people are sad, we laugh at them and we make jokes and then we unfollow them. At best, Sophie gets an occasional look at her sad influencer's profile when we're feeling great about ourselves and want to laugh at people crying. We think that is not a win as a social media influencer. So at the end of this first issue about audience, it is clear that you lose your status at the end of this debate. If you become more authentic, you lose the power that you hold in society. So what do these people actually care about? And this is why that status thing is important. As an influencer, you care about wealth and you care about status. You are probably a very insecure, wealthy, bullied, wealthy, rich kid at high school, and so the idea that people like you and want to follow you is important, and the idea that people know that you are rich is important. Those are the two biggest concerns for you. So I've already proved that you lose your status, which gives you some kind of PTSD to when you were in high school and you had no friends, you were just known as the rich kid with the pool. The second important thing here is why you lose your money and why you lose personal joy. Their argument here from Ellie and David is just that influencers will live happier lives because they're less stressed, because they can just share what they're doing day to day. The problem is, if the influencers are the kind of people that I'm talking about, their problems are not normal problems like financial stress or mental illness, it's having a pimple on your forehead, and that is infinitely more stressful for them to share about than to have to edit a picture of their bum so it looks like infinitely bigger. That is a much more stressful situation for these people. We think it is far worse. So their authenticity is not helping with normal problems that authentic people have. They are very specific problems to this subset of humanity, and those problems they do not want to share because they are far, far more stressful. If you've lost your status, let's talk about wealth. How does this affect business? The Affirmative tries to convince you that businesses have shifted to liking authentic content and that advertising actually has to be authentic now for people to buy things. As a result, if you're an authentic influencer, you make more money. There's a logical problem here, which is that no matter how much Dove tries to shove body positivity in your face, it is still incredibly, incredibly lucrative to sell people a false reality which they cannot buy into. That is the fundamental idea of capitalism. You sell people a life that they cannot achieve for themselves. Insofar as that still exists, influencers are not going to make money by being realistic people because that market is already cornered. The market they're talking about authentic advertising is a very small group of people and a very small group of businesses. And insofar as they don't prove that that is rapidly expanding to include all businesses and all advertising, we're able to show you that the majority of people still want to buy products, give their money to, and engage with ideas which are not actually accessible to them. So you lose all of your money. The final response we get from Sophie is, even if you lost all of your money from Instagram posts, you have the kind of status to build up an alternative business or take a different career. The problem here is every single white girl influencer who lives in Fiji for half of the year doesn't have realistic business opportunities. The realistic opportunity is starting a bikini line or a clothing line, which only works insofar as you are inauthentic and can sell people the best image of yourself. When you've lost your status and you've lost your money, you don't have the capital to start your bikini line, and you no longer have the fake images to sell bikinis, so you are just broke and sad. Neg wins this debate.